Welcome to another episode of What Ted Says. Always time to get a fatter wallet and a bigger net worth. And now that you've actually registered your name with your state, you're close to really being in business. But the next step in here is to ask yourself a simple question. In the state that you live in, is it smart to set up an LLC, or what stands to be a limited liability company? And just because you register your business name doesn't actually mean that you have to get an LLC. In this video, I'll talk about the difference of having unlimited liability versus limited liability and some other important tax considerations you have to have if you decide to set up an LLC. First thing that you've got to get when you set up an LLC is you get an operating agreement. And a lot of business owners that start a side hustle, they don't think about this, but when you set up the LLC, you're going to form that actual operating agreement. These are the official laws of the business, including voting rights, overall rights and responsibilities. And it also includes the transfer of ownership if something should happen to your business. So you're going to want that to happen, especially if you have partners. One of the huge mistakes that people make is if you don't have an operating agreement, it can cause real problems down the road. In the LLC, you can also get asset protection. And this is a big distinction when you start a business because an LLC actually provides its owners with limited liability. This means that if you get sued down the road for something that you do and you're the LLC owner, you're not generally personally liable for any debts incurred by your business, or those lawsuits will be limited to the liability of the business. Whereas if you're just a 1099 contractor, you start a side hustle and you do something and something bad happens, then you can have unlimited liability. People can attack your cars, your homes, or other assets that you have. Now, the next thing you need to think about is the pass-through taxation, because when you set up an LLC and you actually have income that comes in and expenses that go out, this is now going to be, do I have net income or net loss in the business? If you have a sole proprietorship with an LLC, then all of the flow through of your profit or your losses will flow against any other income that you have, and it will be taxed as what's called to be a sole proprietorship. And I would say 90% of the LLCs that I see, they are what's called to be single member LLCs. And with the sole proprietorship, just as a side note, you should remember you're going to pay both halves of the Social Security tax, which means you're going to pay both halves of the FICA, Social Security, and you're going to pay both halves of Medicare. But even though you have an LLC, it doesn't mean that you have to be a sole proprietor. You could be a partnership, or you could choose to file something called Form 2553, and you could end up becoming a S-Corporation. Not a physical S-Corporation, but you're going to be a limited liability company taxed as an S-Corporation. So here we're not talking about the structure of the corporation. It is an LLC. We're talking about how the pass-through taxation is going to happen. Now remember, unlike a corporation, you don't have to have officers or directors. You don't have to have any shareholders. You don't have to have a board. None of that has to happen. So what an LLC does is it provides you with enormous flexibility when it comes to ownership and management and taxation. Those are all the reasons to do it. But just remember this, not everything is a panacea. If you have an LLC, it's almost impossible to raise capital from outside investors because that's just the nature of having an LLC on the whole. And remember, if you set up an LLC, it's going to cost you more for bookkeeping because you should keep a set of books, and also income taxation in the sense that when you file your taxes, there are going to be some extra fees from your accountant to prepare them, which will be different than you doing a Schedule C or a 1099 or just being a sole proprietor. So think about this. Now what do? We got a catchy name. We registered the business. Now we decided, yes, we're going to be an LLC, and we got an operating agreement in place. Now you're going to decide in this process, how should I be taxed? Which way should I be taxed? And then the next question is really important because you have all this together right now. Now the question is, if you want to get out on the intranets, as they say, and you want to get your name out there, have you actually secured the domain name for your business? Because so much business today is done online. How will you legitimize your business if you don't have a domain name and a website for your customers to see who you are and what you do as a business? But in the next video, I'm going to show you some of the biggest scams and some of the biggest lessons I've learned. These tips are really, really good about how to secure a domain name and get it set up, and some other marketing tricks that may help you get some more traction and action when it comes to starting your business. That's another episode here of What Ted Says.